Lisa, it's so great to see you. Thank you for your public service to our city, to public housing. And it's really exciting to have this time to be with you today. And I wanted to just step back as a first question and really help people understand how important public housing and NYCHA is to New York City and even to the country as a resource.
Thank you so much first for this time together, Shaun. I really, really appreciate it. And I really appreciate this question because I don't think people really understand just how much NYCHA means to the city of New York. We are basically a city within a city, and we provide affordable housing to 1 in 17 New Yorkers, which is really astounding through both public housing, our PACT program, and Section 8. So we're serving basically the population of Atlanta and Sacramento. And so when you think about how important affordable housing is, not just to New Yorkers, but to the entire country, how people can be able to have a roof over their head. And if you don't have stable, secure, affordable housing, everything else in your life is not stable. So what we do here, the services that we provide, the roofs over people's heads, it can't be understated.
Absolutely. And, given that it is this city within a city, and in many ways, it's the most deeply affordable housing in that in our city. One of the most clear challenges is how do we keep that precious resource, right? And we know that the capital needs are over $60 billion, almost unimaginable figure. How are you thinking about that need, and what are the most innovative strategies you're taking to approach those needs right now?
So, as you said, our capital needs are enormous. It's actually $60 billion over 5 years, close to $80 billion over 20 years. And when you think about the fact that our portfolio was, much of it was built in the first half of the 20th century, we are really at a crossroads. Less money for capital improvements, decades of disinvestment have really gotten us to this point. And even when we're making routine repairs, we just can't keep up because we don't have enough capital. When you think about the difference between our P&A in 2017, which was $45 billion, and now just a couple of years later, we're at $80 billion. 2/3 of that is like market price escalation. The other third is increased scope. We really have to start thinking, and we are thinking outside of the box. We are looking towards PACT, which has really proven to be incredibly successful in New York. We were a bit behind the rest of the country. New York is very challenging when it comes to change. And I think just generally speaking, especially when you're dealing with residents who live in public housing, they are so very nervous to lose their place of residence. Some of our residents have lived in their developments for decades and decades. So we have a couple of different work streams. We have our PACT program. We have the trust, which I'm so excited to talk about. We have our comprehensive modernization program. And we have what's happening at Fulton Elliott Chelsea, which is really something that I think will be incredibly transformative, which is rebuilding and reimagining an entire campus. One of the greatest challenges, but also one of the best parts about NYCHA is that we are across the 5 boroughs. We are in areas that are transportation deserts. We are in the most vibrant and Tony neighborhoods. And so we really have to make sure that we're not being myopic. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to what we can do here. And we really have to work with the residents, which is really proven to be so incredibly important. We need to listen to what they're interested in, what they're looking for, and really work collaboratively, which is something that historically we've never done.
Yeah, it's great to hear. And look, my perspective as a lifelong New Yorker, but also having served as HUD Secretary and Budget Director, one of the things that really became clear to me is that public housing has not had the constituency of support on Capitol Hill, and not just in the last few years, for decades. And so it's this chronic underfunding of public housing that has really gotten us to this place. You know, we have capital needs all over the country, but given that NYCHA is more than 15% of public housing across the whole country, it is really New York and NYCHA that has suffered the worst from this underfunding. And these new tools that you're working with are really important, not just to preserve public housing, but also to kind of bring public housing into the mainstream of our housing programs and make sure going forward there's more funding as well. So I'm really encouraged to hear that you're taking those on. I'd love to come back to this resident engagement point, because I think it's really important. But first, tell me a little bit more about PACT, about the Preservation Trust. How do those work? What is it that's really innovative about those? Because I do think they're models for the whole country.
100%. So PACT is designed to ensure that the homes of NYCHA residents are permanently affordable by maintaining public control over converted developments. And what we do is we are able to unlock resources that we don't have on the Section 9 side. So we are on track to include 62,000 apartments in our PACT program in order to bring the benefits of comprehensive apartment repairs and building upgrades, as well as enhanced property management and social services to more than 142,000 residents. In 2023 alone, we converted the largest amount of units to the project-based Section 8 program, which is 5,200 units in 2023, for a total of more than 20,000 units converted since the program's inception. And we closed on financing of $1.8 billion for capital repairs at PACT developments, which is the largest capital financing in the program's history. And that's so important because we're unlocking dollars that we don't get on the Section 9 side. Additionally, the subsidy that we receive on the Section 8 side is nearly double that we're receiving. So not only do we have funding for upfront repairs, but we also have the continuity through the subsidy. And in this calendar year, we anticipate converting around 7,000 units to the project-based Section 8 program, which represents about $3 billion in capital funding. So we're really making incredible progress. What also makes the PACT program so innovative is that we're really, really engaging our residents. They meet with the potential PACT partners, and they determine or help us determine which developer we're going to partner with. And they have a say in what's happening. They get to pick out tile and countertops. And it's really, really a collaborative approach, and something that I believe the residents who have historically felt really unheard have a say.
That's great. Yeah, it is. It's interesting because I've worked on housing all across the globe, and I think the way that NYCHA has engaged residents to really drive these choices that are being made about their homes is becoming a model, not just around the country, but around the world. And it's really exciting to see. I do think, one of the things you said that's so important is that, you are unlocking private capital, and there's been concerns about bringing private capital to public housing. That's not new. It's been done for decades, but you're doing it at a scale that really is improving the properties, preserving them. But what's also happening is that as you move from, you said Section 9, for those who don't speak HUD, that's the traditional public housing program, moving over to Section 8, you're moving into a funding stream that has been growing dramatically over the last few decades from a funding stream that's been shrinking. So what you're doing is not only unlocking the capital now, but you're putting yourselves in a position to make sure you have the funding going forward that you need to preserve the properties. And you're bringing in new sources of public funding as well. So that's enormously exciting. Tell me a little bit about the Preservation Trust as well, because that's a newer effort, and one you worked closely with the governor and the state legislature to put in place.
Exactly. So the Public Housing Preservation Trust was signed into law by the governor in June of 2022. And what makes the Public Housing Preservation Trust so special is that it's a fully public entity. So what we heard over and over when we were engaging residents around PACT was that this is the privatization of public housing. And we really listened. And we said, okay, we know that there are some residents who feel very comfortable working with a private developer, but we are going to create a model where the development is kept 100% public and converted to project-based Section 8 while ensuring residents always maintain their rights, including permanently affordable rent. And NYCHA will be the entity that maintains the property on a daily basis. So we are basically using our own workforce. And I should say that 20% of NYCHA's workforce also lives in public housing. So, we see a really holistic approach. So the interesting part of the trust legislation is that no development can be transferred to the trust without a resident vote opting in for the trust. So the first resident vote was held in 2023 at Nostrand Houses in the Sheepshead Bay neighborhood of Brooklyn. And as part of the vote, which enables residents to vote in person, by mail, online, residents could choose one of three things. They could stay in public housing, keep traditional Section 9 household. They could vote to move to the trust, or they could convert through the PACT program. And I have to tell you, the engagement, and it's 100 days of engagement prior to the 30 days of voting. And I have to tell you, it's really, really interesting to see once people have advice and facts that are coming from NYCHA, as opposed to, information that they're getting that might not always be correct, people feel empowered. And it's just wonderful. So at Nostrand Houses, we had 51% of eligible voters come out to vote in favor of the trust. Overwhelmingly, the vote was either for trust or PACT. So what we're seeing is that people really want to see change. They understand that the funding is just not there. They see how hard we're working, but if you don't have the dollars to do the transformative work that needs to be done, they're just going to, face the same leaks, the same issues that they've had historically. We had our second vote just finished at the end of April at Bronx River Addition, which is a senior development, 2 buildings, one that we had to vacate because of the conditions of the heating and the pipes. There, 61% of the residents decided that they wanted to move through transformation from Section 9 to project-based Section 8 via the trust. And now we currently have our 100 days of engagement underway at 2 other developments in Brooklyn, at Coney Island and at Unity Towers. Those votes will be separate, but we really, really see a change. And what we've done both through the PACT program and through the trust is we've taken residents to PACT developments that have converted so they can really see the change that their development can also achieve when we switch the funding streams.
You know, at the same time, we're talking about preserving this precious resource of public housing. We just had the housing vacancy survey in New York show that we have a lower vacancy rate than we've ever recorded. We're getting down close to 1% vacancy rate, which is really unprecedented. And so would love to talk a little bit about the potential for not just preserving what we have, but for building more affordable housing in New York City, because we've never needed it more than we do today. And specifically, you've got 78 million square feet of unused development rights. But because of the way the public housing program was set up originally with different kinds of liens and the underlying ownership documents and all of this incredibly wonky, unsexy stuff that a housing wonk like me could talk about, how are you thinking about that potential at this moment to be part of a larger solution around the need to create more affordable housing?
You know, that's a great question. And I really wish that we had a bit more flexibility. NYCHA has an estimated 80 million square feet of unused air rights. But as you know, but everyone else might not, that you need to have an eligible receiving site in order to transfer them. And NYCHA has advocated for zoning changes to enable NYCHA to sell air rights to a wider range of receiving sites. We have not been as successful as we would like. But we're currently analyzing sites selected for PACT to see if those campuses have eligible purchasers for any excess development rights, and we'll combine the programs where possible. The revenue that's generated from these transactions can also augment the PACT rehabilitation scope at these developments. So just by way of background, we have generated about $55 million in revenue to pay for capital repairs at NYCHA developments through the sale of air rights. In 2020, we completed 2 air right transfers, one at Ingersoll Houses in Brooklyn for nearly $25 million, and another at Hobbs Court in Manhattan for $2.6 million. And in 2022, NYCHA completed another sale at Manhattanville for $28 million. This year, we expect to sell air rights at Compost Plaza, but we're really hoping that the more receiving sites, if we could unlock more receiving sites, and as you know, not everyone might know, the city is really in the process of reimagining what our zoning regulations look like. But I don't know whether this is something that's necessarily on the table. But I think we have other opportunities to build more housing. You know, we are at functionally zero vacancy. And when we think about what we're doing at Fulton Elliott Chelsea, which is really unlocking, I think, an additional 3,500 mixed income and 875 affordable apartments, in addition to the existing apartments at Fulton Elliott Chelsea, those 2 developments. I think, you know, that's another area where we can really see new building, both affordable and market rate, which helps us sustain the management, the capital repairs going into the next couple of decades.
One last question for you. You've been really generous with your time. The underfunding that we talked about over decades led to lawsuits and even a consent agreement with the federal government and the U.S. Attorney. Where are you on the agreement there? How is it going with the monitor? Anything you want RPA folks to know about that process at this moment? Because there have been some changes recently there too.
Yes, so the past 4 years have been really transformative for NYCHA. We signed an agreement with HUD in the Southern District in 2019. We have pillar areas that we focus on around lead and mold, heating, elevators, pest and waste. And we have a new monitor. Our former monitors, 5 years, they transitioned out, and we have a new monitor team from Jenner and Block. And we're really, really working collaboratively. We have data-driven metrics that we use to really make sure that we are meeting our obligations. We have agreements in each of our pillar areas, metrics that we are trying to meet. And we've made incredible, incredible progress on our capital side, our investments in elevator repairs, boiler replacements. Last year, we spent over $1 billion and completed 100 projects. Focusing on our pillar areas. The agreement also required NYCHA to write a transformation plan about the way that we're going to address our needs going into the next century. It required us to build out a very robust compliance unit and quality assurance unit. Their work has been absolutely transformative in the way that we look at productivity, the way that we look at our culture. And I have to tell you, now is a really great time to be at NYCHA, because the work that we are doing under the guidance of HUD and our monitor, to me, I look at it as really free technical assistance. The more people that are focused on NYCHA, the more people that are helping us transform and do better, the better off and the better we can serve our residents.
Great to hear. At the end of the day, you got to have a working elevator. You got to have heat that works in the winter time. Those are the most fundamental responsibilities that NYCHA has and the city has to our residents, to the city within a city, as we started with, that is NYCHA. So thank you for your leadership. Encouraged to see progress and look forward to working with you in so many of the areas that we've talked about. Thanks for joining RPA today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.